Holiday season for air travelers. Flights delayed and canceled because of the weather or other issues that are out of your control. But what are your rights when it comes to compensation with the airlines? With more, we are joined by Gabor Lukacs of Air Passenger Rights. Gabor, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
Let's start with what happens if your flight is canceled because there's no crew available. That seems to be an issue at times. What are your rights there?
The airline is responsible for providing adequate crew for flights. So if there is no crew, this is something completely and fully within the airline's control. And the airline, at the very bare minimum, has to rebook you on other flights, including flights of other airlines. They should be providing you also with accommodation and meal vouchers, although in the case of Porter, that's not set out actually in their terms and conditions. After your flight, if you have incurred out-of-pocket expenses for meals, accommodation, lost wages, the airline is required to pay for those. Unfortunately, most of the time, the airline will refuse to do so unless you take them to court.
Okay, so for example, if you had to buy that $17 sandwich to eat something because you had a flight delayed, you can provide them a receipt for that, but they're not required to actually reimburse you?
They are required to reimburse you for it, but they will just refuse anyway. Most Canadian airlines, unfortunately, are misleading the passengers about their rights. Just yesterday, it came out that WestJet has been defrauding passengers about their rights with respect to compensation for delayed baggage. Air Canada was found to be misleading passengers with respect to baggage. So deception, fraud, misinformation is the modus operandi currently of the Canadian airlines because the federal regulator, the Canadian Transportation Agency, is not doing its job.
Okay, so weather is also a big problem at this time of year. We know planes have to be de-iced. I learned over the holidays even trains have to be de-iced, and that can often cause a domino effect for delays and even cancellations. So what do those type of cancellations mean when it comes to by the weather?
De-icing is not an out of the ordinary condition. In the wintertime, aircraft need to be de-iced, and the airline should be calculating for that. So I would not consider that a genuine weather-caused delay or cancellation.
Okay.
A genuine one is when there is a snowstorm or when there is a ground delay program in place at the airport for the reason of extraordinary weather. In those cases, the airline's only obligation is to rebook you on their own next available flight. They do not owe you in that situation any compensation for your expenses. That is something that you should have an insurance for under the law. So the general principle is that the airline is not liable if it has taken all reasonable measures to prevent your delay. If it is a problem with de-icing, the de-icing is actually a crew that works for the airline, so they control them. But if the airport is shut down because of a snowstorm, there is absolutely nothing that the airline could have done to prevent your delay, so they will not be responsible for that.
Okay, so it seems that there are times where there's really nothing you can do, and then there are times where there are some things that you can do, and going to the airline seeking compensation is at least one of them. Okay, Gabor, thank you very much for this insightful information. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.